almost like bulldoze your way into a clinching range. You just have to be aggressive in order to close the distance and make sure that you're in control of the clinch. Guys, this video, another beginner's clinching video. We're going to be talking about how to enter into the clinch. Now, this often doesn't get addressed at training because most of the time what you find with Muay Thai training is when you're doing partner drills, you're either doing striking or clinching. It doesn't often blend. In fact, most of the time you see in Thailand, they take the gloves off and they just clinch. Now, this is a good thing because it forces people to clinch. A lot of the time what happens is people almost avoid the clinch by just using their striking. So it's like if I said to, if me and Dan were clinching and Dan hates clinching, he can avoid it by just like every time I come into clinch, he just punches and kicks and teeps me away, and now we never get to practice any clinch. Dan doesn't get any better at clinching. I don't get any better at clinching. So a lot of the time what they do is they'll just go, especially in Thailand, all right, next 40 minutes, you just clinch. Gloves off, all you're doing is throwing knees and clinching. So one way to really get the good reps in, but the downside is you don't often cover how to close that distance from striking range to kneeing range and clinching range. Now, there's no one correct way to enter the clinch. It all depends on what your opponent's doing. But what I'd like you to take away from this is the concept of dealing with the opponent's hands and not just coming in like a cat and trying to jump on Dan like this, but I have to deal with his arms first. So that could be by grabbing a hold, like even just putting my hands in the way. So Dan, say we're sort of sparring here. So see how I'm like just going to be touching and then I might enter through the center. See that one, what I did was I sort of put this left arm on the inside, face this way just a touch, Dan. My left arm kind of went on the inside here, so that created a frame, so Dan couldn't really hit me back too well, and if he does try and hit me from there, I can lift that elbow and block it. And the right one blocked this arm from being able to punch. So we have to address, and that's just one way, but the concept is we have to address the hands before we go trying to hold on. Always address the strikes before you try and grab. So we'll do the same thing, so move around. If I just come in trying to grab a hold of Dan, bang, he can just nail me with punches or elbows, right? So one thing, obviously, grab a hold of the hands, don't get hit on the way in. You can do one hand at a time. So it could be one hand stays up while this hand grabs, and then I start to enter the clinch. It could be keeping one hand up, shooting it in. That way I'm protected from this other hand punching. If he chooses to punch, I've got that one up, and then I can choose to claim or come inside. There's a number of ways you can do this, but address the hands first. Also, another way of stopping him from hitting me, a way of addressing the hands, is to throw the punches at him so he's thinking about defending. Because if I'm throwing punches at Dan, if he's got somewhat of a defensive mindset and he's got some sense of self-preservation, he's going to be thinking, if I throw a jab, what do you want to do? If I throw a hook, see, all of a sudden he starts thinking about blocking these punches and he's not thinking about hitting me back. So a good way is to like use my strikes to then enter into a clinch, right? If I just come in like that, once again, it's the same issue. So being like punches and then we're into a clinch. I even use the hook to sort of hit around the back here, and that's already into the clinch. That's another way you can do it as well. So just entering from striking to a clinch and not just walking into clinch. If you're just that type of fighter that really wants to be in the clinch, Muay Khao, as people refer to as like a clinch and knee fighter, you want to make sure that guard is super tight so it stays really tight. I don't particularly love this way of fighting unless my opponent is way more skilled, like everything I'm doing, I'm getting hit. I just have to be aggressive in order to close the distance. Then I might resort to this way, but it's not my go-to. But you can just stay super tight with your guard and almost like bulldoze your way in until you're into a clinching range, that's an option as well.
So in this fight between Petchpinchu and Saenchai, you can see Petchpinchu enter the clinch there. Once again, he is using his frames to deal with Saenchai's hands. So as he comes in, he doesn't just walk in, he sticks out those arms in order to sort of bat Saenchai's guard out of the way to get a little bit closer so that he can wrap him up and engage in that clinch.
Now another way of entering the clinch is using strikes, is to come off the back of our knees, which is a really effective way. Like me throwing a knee puts me in position where I'm already able, and like sort of bridges the gap between like kicks and punches, knees, clinch, right? It's sort of like that gradual progression from there to there to there to there. So it starts to get a little more advanced when you're trying to put them all together, but I'm just showing you it is a very effective way of closing that distance, because once again, coming from a long way out to all the way in sometimes can be very hard, especially if you've got a Muay Thima, like a more technical fighter who's just teeping you away and throwing long kicks, and you're trying to close this really long distance, and every time you come in they teep you away, or they throw up a quick head kick. Like Saenchai is a great example of someone who's not particularly a great clincher, but really good at spoiling people who are trying to clinch him. So you often don't see him spend a lot of time in the clinch because he's more of a technical fighter. So using those knees, say me and Dan are kind of like sparring. From here, I might boom. See Dan, he reacted to that knee, that's what I want. I want him to boom, that brings his head down that little bit and allows me to come over the top there, right? So I can be punch, knee, boom, there we go, I'm into the clinch. Immediately, I'm going for a dominant position. So I don't want to, I've covered this in a previous video, so I won't spend too much time on it. But immediately, I don't want to come into the clinch, say Dan's hands are up, I don't want to come into the clinch and just stay here, then Dan goes boom. Now he's got the dominant position. It defeats the purpose of me going into the clinch in the first place. I want to make sure once I've boom, say I grab here, straight away I'm getting a double inside position. If possible, I'll get to here, but anywhere where I feel that I'm in control is a good position for me to go to. And if Dan fights back to the inside, boom, I'm going to straight away continue to fight, look for that rear knee to go from there, you know. So as soon as I enter it, don't mess about. Straight away go for those inside frames. Use those knees or punches or whatever. Boom, straight away I'm into the inside frame. I know it's probably a bad demonstration for me on Dan because I hardly have to lift my knees in order to hit him. But you get the idea. As soon as I go in with those knees, even if I don't actually land them, it just creates some nervousness, creates some reactions from my opponent, which allows me to grab a hold.
So in this example here, we see Petchpinchu in the red closing the distance using his light lead leg. He's using it as almost like faking the teep or faking the knee, but also he uses it as a way of stopping Saenchai from teeping him, because he's got that knee high. It's kind of awkward for Saenchai to use his teep. Saenchai's trying to stay on the outside, so he uses that as a way of closing the distance to get inside and clinch. That lightly leg coming in stops Saenchai's teep, also lands a sneaky little knee on the way in. Then he's in the clinch where he's a more dominant fighter and takes Saenchai's long weapons away from him. So in this instance here, we see Saenchai using his punches to enter a dominant position, a double inside framing position in the clinch. So it's actually Petchpinchu in this instance that's trying to come forward and close the distance, but Saenchai displays how he goes straight from punches. Once the distance gets close enough, he switches to a short elbow and straight into an inside position with his frames. Unfortunately, Petchpinchu, being a slightly superior clincher in this instance, gets inside those frames again and then starts sort of working from the inside. Right here, they're both just trying to get a break. So that's like they're looking for the ref to break it up at this point. Once they get to there, it's a neutral position, nothing's happening. They're just waiting for the ref to come over and break it, which he does.
So just to summarize, guys, when you're coming into the clinch, entering the clinch, you have to deal with the punches and deal with the strikes first. If possible, use strikes of your own to close that distance. And then once you get inside, immediately work for a dominant position to make sure that you're in control of the clinch.